Afternoon. Hi, I'm Guy Letts, and I'm here with my colleague Darren Wake. He's a senior account manager. He's running the show, and he's going to be monitoring any questions that you might drop into the chat. We want to keep these sessions short and focused because your time is precious. So I'll make a start. A quick bit of housekeeping so that you know what to expect in the running order. There may be a chance for questions at the end if we have time. You can submit questions on the chat. Darren will collect them together. If we don't have time at the end, we will follow up with you personally to make sure you get an answer. And we are recording the session, so we'll send you a link to the video afterwards. So don't worry about scribbling notes, and don't worry if you have to leave early. Quite understand. You can catch up on the video later. Quick introduction to me. I'm Guy Letts. I've worked with over 300 of our clients at Customer Assure to implement our software. And I think now in every continent, except the very cold ones at the top and the bottom. Before Customer Assure, I was head of customer service at a FTSE 100 company. So I also know what it's like to have my neck on the block. Over the last 13 years or so that we've been running Customer Assure, we've learnt such a huge amount about this area. And in these webinars, we're simply sharing that experience. So there's no obligation, there's no hard sell. You might be just starting out with customer feedback or Net Promoter Score or CSAT or customer or something like that. Maybe you've started, but you're not getting the benefits that you think you should. Maybe you've just got a lot of questions, or maybe you're an old hand and you just want to freshen up, get a few tips. Well, whatever stage you're at, of course, we'd like to work with you as a customer if there's an opportunity. But honestly, today now, whether you end up using our software or somebody else's software, whether you've got your own that you're already using today, we just want to introduce ourselves and share what we know in case it helps you. Right. So what's the real problem we're trying to solve here? Why do our customers not spring into action whenever we invite their feedback with a customer satisfaction survey? Why are we not instantly inundated? Well, as always, if you want the best solution, you better make sure you're addressing the right problem. So there may be a few surprises for you here as we go through these 4 sessions. However much feedback you get, secondly, I will show you how to get more in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. But what will you do with the extra feedback when you get it? And it might even be that what we do or don't do with customer responses is the reason we don't get more. I wonder if you've ever thought about that. Does your response when you receive feedback match up with what a customer wants when they give it? So this section is really important. I could just jump straight into lots of tactics about designing your surveys better, getting better wording in the subject line of the email to make people more likely to open them, making it a sharper SMS message. But that's just tinkering around the edges, and it will only ever get you marginal gains. If you want a big step increase in response rates, you need a rock solid, crystal clear understanding of what customers expect when they give feedback, and a rock solid practical understanding of how your business can benefit from feedback in specific monetary terms. I guess the whole spirit and emphasis that I will be conveying is that customer satisfaction doesn't work when it's a niche activity for a few people in your company. If it's like a separate customer experience project that not everybody shares in, people don't understand, feels like the poor relation. It's not a sideshow at Glastonbury. It needs to be part of the action on the main stage. So it's not a nice to have or a best practice or something you get a quality accreditation with. It can and should be a way to make much more money for your business. Or if you're a not-for-profit organization, it should be a way to make you able to give much better service to your service users or stakeholders. Thirdly, once we've got our thinking straight, we'll take a blow-by-blow look at specific examples, what helps response rate, what suppresses them. And finally, Everybody wants to know, what response rate should you aim for? 10%, 20%, 50%? And why is this a trick question? Okay, quick moment. Let's reflect and get our heads in the game. What do you think the answer is? What do you think causes low response rates? What makes you want to respond to surveys? What makes you more likely to respond? Sorry, not likely, more likely. What do you think is the solution to this particular response rate conundrum? How do we change? What's the secret of turning a trickle into the flood that we all think we deserve, and actually that in many cases customers would like to give? We'll take a look at that. So I'd be surprised if anyone does jump for joy when a satisfaction survey lands in their inbox. I do get good ones occasionally, but the quality, regrettably, is generally very low. And the good news, it's easy to do much better. Let's look at a few examples of what we're up against, though. Reminders. Are you grateful for reminders? Is the company doing you a service and helping you because you forgot the first time and you so desperately wanted to fill in their survey? Or are they pestering you because they have a target for their response rates and they haven't hit it, so they're sending reminders? Well, if sending reminders is your current go-to method for increasing response rates, I'd like to help you change that from a first resort to a last resort. There is a place for them. I grudgingly accept that, but let's make them not the first port of call, because actually, as customers, we're not necessarily that grateful for an even fuller inbox, are we? Good or bad? Well, personally, I always find this question really hard. And it's not often I criticize a feedback form for having too few questions. I'm not accused of that very often, but this is a common response actually, because it's the built-in tool in Zendesk, the support system, and I'm not a fan of it. Note that the language in the email is we. The outcome they're looking for is mainly about them and their quest for data. For me, that's the wrong emphasis. If I'm a customer and you want my feedback, if it's all about you and your reports and you getting more data, that's kind of not oiling the wheels of me wanting being more likely to give you more feedback. So the whole process should be to benefit people who are customers. You know, I would give feedback. What would I like in return for that? I don't just want to help you by supplying data. I might on a good day, if I've got time on my hands. That doesn't happen too often. So however noble your intentions are for using that data to make improvements, that doesn't necessarily translate into motivation for a customer to give it. And in this case here, you're not even allowing me to tell you what it is that I'd like to you to improve. There's only two options. That doesn't match the situations when you go to a company for support. That doesn't match the situations that actually happen. Sometimes the person you're dealing with, the person replying to your emails or the person on the phone, has been great. They're a lovely person, and you don't want them to be marked down by getting a lot of bad I'm unsatisfied scores, because we suspect that that's what happens in the background. But I might, yeah, however lovely they've been, I might still be unhappy about the problem I contacted them about. So how do I answer when it's a bit of both? I don't want to penalize the nice person on the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm not happy yet. Which one do I pick? What if I don't know yet? What if it wasn't a one-step solution? What if the person's promised a solution, but I'm still waiting to find out whether they're going to deliver on that promise? So I don't want to say yes or no at this stage. Maybe it helps if I ignore this one and I'm pretty sure a reminder is going to come around. But you know, very often it's more nuanced, and being forced to pick one or the other is, in fact, in this situation, quite frustrating for me. So the feedback form here doesn't match what customers want to tell you about at this point in their dealings with. So you get a poor response rate and a low quality of data just because the form hasn't been thought through properly. Better questions, if you ask me to how to make this better, what do I want to tell them about in this? Was it easy to reach the right person, somebody who could help me? How good was the person at listening and understanding my problem correctly? You know, did they fob me off? Did they answer a different problem? Or did they actually get to the nub of the issue and nail it for me? Were they friendly and helpful? It's quite a stressful contacting sport, isn't it? You always think it's going to be hard and problematic and unsatisfying. Well, it's stressful. Were they friendly and efficient? Did they put me at ease? Did they solve the problem slickly for me? How satisfied was I with the outcome? Maybe an open question. Those are the things I want you to be good at, but what else could you do to improve my experience with you? So half a dozen questions covering the things that are important to me, and that will give you so much more information to make your service better, because it's dealing with the specifics of the things that I want you to be brilliant at when I'm coming to you for support. And that's a thing really to keep in mind. Always in choosing questions, some people get really, it's one of the most common questions we get asked actually. Some people get really anxious about this and start Googling. Well, no, the best questions to ask in any scenario, any situation, any interaction is think about what the customer would want you to be brilliant at. You know, whether they're buying something for you, whether they've contacted you for technical help, whatever it is, customer service and a billing issue, what would make that experience brilliant for? Flip it round, think about what those things would be. Those are your questions. Dead easy, actually. And actually, the questions you choose is an opportunity to impress your customers, because if the customer thinks, well, gosh, they've really understood what's important to me, that can help you as well. That improves customer experience. Okay, reminders again. Is this helping me remember? Is it a good experience for me as a customer, or is it just another annoying email filling up my bulging inbox? It's very hard to make a case that reminders benefit customers. Mostly, I find they're to compensate for poor design of the feedback process. And for that reason alone, please use them very sparingly. 10 minutes. I used to work for BA. It was long time, 30 years ago, but I know they still make their big bucks from the premium business travelers, the people who sit in the comfy seats at the front. If you think about that target customer base of British Airways, do you think they're the type of people who are likely to have 10 minutes to spare? 10 minutes of I don't know, whatever pay grade they're on. Even if they have, do you think it's how they'd want to spend their spare 10 minutes? So the negative consequences of a 10-minute survey, the response rate is going to be low. And actually, because BA outsourced this activity, they use a research company, you will be repeatedly pestered to reply, because the expensive outsourcing consultancy won't want to go back to BA with an embarrassingly small amount of data. So you're going to get hammered with reminders. They'll only get responses from the people who do have time on their hands, which, as we've just established, is mostly not going to be the target customers, not the high spenders. So the results will be skewed from the people who are not their ideal customers. So it's not really going to be safe to make good decisions on them. In fact, I did the survey. It took me 15 minutes, which I wasn't happy about, because they'd set the expectation at 10. And even in those 15 minutes, I wasn't dragging my heels. I could have done it in 10 of it, but then you would have suffered with your data quality as well. So that's not the sort of getting customers to do it faster and rushing through it impairs the data quality as well. So there are times when customers might engage and give you their full concentration for 10 minutes on a survey, maybe even 15. But that's rare. Perhaps in the example of one of our clients, a care home provider, you've got a loved one living in a care home. We'd spend time on that, wouldn't we? We'd be motivated to answer quite a wide range of questions. There's the standard of care to think about, the accommodation, is it clean, is it comfortable, have they got everything they need, food, the drink, do they get a nice cup of tea at the right time, the activities that are laid on so people don't get bored, access to medical attention. And how well we as friends and family, how well are we being kept informed about their care, about things that are going on in the home. So think about your customers, think about their situation, what's important to them, think about the demographic that you're dealing with, and design your surveys to meet their needs and their circumstances. It says you can contact them about the survey. I've tried, they never respond. That's another frustrating. If you're going to put that sort of thing in, make sure you reply to it, because frustrated people don't respond to service. Just while we're on the subject of outsourcing, another implication of outsourcing, the impact on the customers is not always thought through. If you're a customer and you raise an issue in your response to the survey, you probably won't get a response when it's outsourced. There's no ownership. There's usually no mechanism for issues to be escalated. And if there is a mechanism, it'll be probably with a time delay, certainly not within the time scale that you as a customer might reasonably hope for. And that's bad for you as the company doing it, because you'll miss those cries for help. I know this from personal experience when I was customer service director. Those cries for help can be customers who are at risk that you want to save, because if you lose them, perhaps unknowingly sometimes, or you leave it too long and if they've already voted with their feet, that's money off the bottom line that you've lost. Okay, here's an example I received from Hilton Hotels. This set a record in my personal tally. This was the 6th reminder I received about a one-day meeting room booking. That's a red flag. Even I'll grudgingly accept that there's a place for reminders occasionally, but it's not a good sign of the culture in the company that someone didn't call out the madness of sending 6 reminders. Common sense is not prevailing, and it's not an incentive for me to respond in case the rest of the process is just as bad as that one. So the lesson here is that every aspect of your customer feedback process, even the number of reminders you enter, sends a signal. It can have a positive or negative impact on response rates. The feedback process actually is just as much a part of customer experience as, you know, day job in the business, the main products or services and your other business processes. So it should be polished and as excellent as you just hope those to be as well. The completion, sorry, I'll go back to that. The completion time is a worry too. Look at that in the text there, 2 to 3 minutes. We just hired a room for the day. What would you want to be good if you, how easy was it to book? Was it clean and ready? How good was the food and drink? Were the people friendly and attentive? Were we there when we needed them? Anything else we could do to make things, that's 20 seconds really, and you've covered all the bases. So if you force me through 2 to 3 minutes and you say that in your covering email, that's going to make me less likely to respond. You can learn a lot from the wording. Their main goal, if you read it, is they want to score. And that's my second red flag. I love numbers and measures and targets as much as anybody else if they're wisely chosen. But I hate it when it leads to people who, well, they call themselves customer experience people, but they're inflicting a bad experience on me just because they've got a target that they need to hit. Then look at the scale. How are you used to filling in satisfaction surveys? I noticed this one, the scale is the opposite way around from what I'm used to. I usually count from 0 to 10. This one's flipped it round from 10 to 0. Why have they done that, do you think? I've been in this game 20 years, doing this stuff 20 years now. That's a red flag. That's my third red flag, strike 3. I now know for sure that somebody has been set a target to achieve not only a response rate, but a certain satisfaction score. And here they're using mind games to manipulate me into giving a score so they can hit their target. It's a psychology trick. Of course, it may make the number higher. You know, we may be programmed some, my daughter's got a psychology degree, she'll tell me all about this. But of course, even if you do click the higher number because it's on the left, it doesn't reflect higher cut. My satisfaction is still the same level, what number I click. It'll be about right. It does nothing for me. And actually, it's worse than that because, sorry, I'm all over the place here. I'm trying to, apologies. It's worse than that because if you think your score is higher than it actually is, then you'll be lulled into a false sense of security and you won't take the action that is possibly merited. Okay, now let's have the reveal. Great. The worst part of all this is actually in practice, unless your experience is very different from mine, nobody reads your carefully crafted comments when you have decided to spend time to help a company give them some feedback. It's really frustrating to feel that you've been ignored. Why would you ever bother filling in another one of their surveys again? So that's not good response rates either. Final example, and this will polarize people. If this is your survey in a company and you're deploying it, you may be seduced by the idea that a computer can magically process text and tell you the answers without you having to do a stroke of work, because we've all heard of ChatGPT, haven't we? On the other hand, any customers who have ever used a chatbot will abandon hope at this point. If you see this, you know for sure that nobody will read your answer. Even if you summed up your comment succinctly and crafted a really careful response that exactly tells the company what they need to do to keep your business, they want you to do more work and type more so that the computer can guess what you meant and then aggregate your response and mangle it together with everybody else's. If customers can detect that nobody will ever read what they say, isn't that going to make response rates lower rather than higher? So that's a bit of a red flag too. Whatever response rate you get at the minute, if you're doing this, I can make it higher. But unfortunately, when you make response rate an objective, when you set a target for it, you drive behaviors that impair customer experience rather than improve it. So the quest for high response rates should never be at the cost of customer experience. And in fact, I hope you can now see that you'll get the best response rate when you make customer feedback a fantastic experience for customers, not one that they begrudge. So let's move on and look at how to do that. It works best when your desire to receive feedback in your role in your company aligns with the reasons why your customers want to give you feedback. It is often said that customers hate satisfaction surveys. That's not true. Our servers are humming literally 24 hours a day with millions of survey responses. But what customers do hate is bad satisfaction surveys, or actually a bad satisfaction survey process. Surveys that are too long, poor questions that don't match their needs, they're sent at the wrong time, and especially if the customer raises an issue, you know, that you've offered the way to make it easy to contact you and tell them what's good or what's not working for them. They give the response and nothing ever happens because most cases nobody ever reads it. Let's look at how we can get you the best quality data and the highest response rates in a way which is also appealing to customers. And it's not as hard, that's the good news, but neither is it as simple as just making your surveys shorter or prettier. Well, I'm not asking this question, why do you want more? I'm not asking this flippantly. Obviously, we want a good response rate. High response rates are unquestionably a good thing. So it's not so much whether you want more as why you want more. How are you using the feedback, and what will more feedback enable you to do? And is there an angle to that that benefits the customer and makes it a virtuous survey? So let's think about the connection between getting customer feedback into your company. You know, is that an end in itself? Or can you find a way to feed through and use that feedback to measurably improve the business performance? Finding a link between feedback and improving the bottom line is critical actually for success in getting higher response rates. And I'll explain what I mean by that and how to do that. So traditionally, this is what happens. The business is running, it has business objectives, and everyone knows that sales is important. That doesn't need explaining to people. Sales is always a big deal. You've got a good accounting system, you've got a good CRM system, or you're about to get one. Maybe you're putting Salesforce in, or Dynamics. Maybe you've got your own to do with your line of business. But eventually somebody decides that customer satisfaction surveys would be a good idea too. Net Promoter Score, or they've heard of Customer Effort Score or CSAT scores. This is not bad. This is great. But sometimes it starts to go wrong as early as that point. The project is set up. Targets are set for it. Targets, obviously. We're measuring a satisfaction score, so we better set a target. Because we don't just want a satisfaction score, do we? We want a high score. And naturally, we want a high response rate. Of course we do. We might not be sure exactly why, but it seems obvious, so we'll set a target for response rate too. And of course, we need to demonstrate, like all good projects, we need a return on investment because we're having to spend money on it. So we need to be able to justify that, and we've got to show that to somebody. But the reason this is a bad model is because it tends to be run as a separate undertaking. I always see it, not always, sorry, nearly always. It's seen as kind of something, a good thing. It's like eating vegetables. It's a good thing to do. Yeah, we don't get an immediate benefit from that, but we think somehow if we keep doing it, it'll be a benefit for us. But it's not an immediate impact. It might even be restricted to one area. You might have one person or one team or one department responsible for this. You might, you probably tell I'm not a big fan of outsourcing customer feedback, but some companies I find outsource it, and actually they're coming to us because that hasn't been satisfactory. The data tends to be seen only by marketers or analysts when it's set up in this way, and that's a problem if you're a customer with a burning issue and you've used this easy opportunity of a survey to give that feedback because it's the only way you've been able to raise it. And when it's separate like this, it's practically impossible to demonstrate a return on investment. The costs are clear. You might have a headcount, you might have people doing this, but the Voice of Customer project itself doesn't directly generate money. So it's all very woolly how it indirectly somehow nudges a financial performance over to the left in the mainstream business. So when there's a crisis, this never happens in your company, I'm sure, but when there's a flap on, something's gone wrong, or everybody over this side of the boat, we've got a problem, we need to fix it. We need to pull, where can we pull resource from? We've been not hitting the sales this month, where can we cut money from? The bigger problem is that when this happens, people are pulled away, funding is cut temporarily or permanently. And if it does continue, it's more an act of faith than because there's a cold, hard commercial understanding of how it benefits the business. And the bigger problem, actually, less obvious on this diagram, is that when you approach it in this way, the customer experience doesn't benefit as it should, as we've already seen, because there's a slightly wrong-headed approach to the whole thing. So there's a better way, which solves all of those problems. Instead of treating feedback as a separate cottage industry run by a separate team or person or department with its own separate different objectives, instead you embed it into the business as usual, and you use it to help you achieve your existing primary business goals. And instead of targets for things like customer retention and new customers from referrals, you use these as measures. Google Goodhart's law afterward, make a note of it. Google Goodhart's law. Basically, it says whenever you've got something that's great and really useful as a measure, if you turn it into a target, it ceases to be an effective measure. So we're using these measures, we are measuring these things, we're using the information from us to make informed decisions, but we're not setting them as targets. The targets stay as your existing business targets. Who needs more targets to hit? We've already all got enough to do. So using feedback to hit your existing business targets is the essence of this approach. And that one's better. So replace the model where sales is everything and service is separate, where it's always, well, it's always seen as cost, isn't it? And by embedding customer feedback into the business processes, the feedback becomes available to sales teams, it becomes available to account managers, to production or professional staff, product managers, all the people who shape or deliver the company's products and services, and all the frontline people who sell and support them. Staff get to see scores and comments from customers in real time here, and they get to see them in a way that's appropriate to their role, you know, potentially just the data that they need to do. They might get a daily summary of the feedback that came in yesterday if they're a supervisor. It might be a real-time dashboard for a customer service manager that they can see where the heat is and where the strengths and weaknesses are. Or it might be receiving survey responses as they come in. Immediately customers submit them. There'll be people in your company who can do something about problems if they spot them immediately. But basically everybody, whatever their role, has the information to do their job better. And their job, by the way, is not delivering a new set of voice of customer project objectives. Their job is delivering the business objectives for the company. And so you're going to improve your ability to sell to new customers from lead generation because you've got a great reputation for service. You're going to save those customers who are at risk because you're finding them instantly. You're identifying problems before they snowball and become big issues that drag everybody off to fix them. And you'll be reducing costs and manpower because you're nipping in the bud. So you're using satisfaction scores to make the business healthier upstream of when the problems and the complaints are generated. And actually, that makes the business get a reputation for better service, which helps you. It's much easier to sell when you've got a great reputation than a bad reputation. That's obvious. Have you thought that higher margins can be justified? You know, there are people, probably the people you want as customers, those who are a bit less price sensitive. The high quality customers, they're great to have, aren't you? Because they will pay a bit more for service. And if you've got a way of delivering that consistently, then you can justify potentially a price premium. And that's another way in which it's easier to calculate your return on investment. So higher response rates are valuable. It helps you put more fuel in the tank and do this process better. So now that's the strategy, if you like. That's getting our thinking straight about how we use customer feedback in our business to literally improve the bottom line financially. Now we can solve the real problem we're here for, how to increase response rates. Of course, not by bludgeoning customers into submission, but by making the feedback process so outstandingly brilliant that they'll be chomping at the bit. So two bits to it, aren't there? There's the things you need to stop doing, the bad practices, and then we'll come on and look at the better things that make it nice to take part in your feedback systems. So things to avoid. Don't send surveys when you decide you want some data. Don't just do annual satisfaction surveys. Some organizations, well, we've always done an annual satisfaction survey and we need to compare with last year's, so we have to do, well, unless all your customers simultaneously well up with their ideas and their feedback miraculously on the same day every year, annual surveys are not necessarily the best way for you to get the best quality of feedback. Great if they do, but actually it's also hard to process all those ideas when they flood in and respond to them in the timely way, which is actually often required if you're to impress them. Avoid phrases like, your feedback is important. I mean, telephone systems, your call is important. That has been a recorded message for 30 years that I've been aware of. It's worn a bit thin, hasn't it? Don't repeat that cliche, please. especially if you're not going to read and respond to the feedback, perish the thought. Customers are not motivated to give feedback by your need to produce a monthly satisfaction report. So even if the feedback's important to you, that's not the best motivator for them to give it. It's quite common to start with the Net Promoter Score question, the would you recommend us question. People like to put it first. We have this debate a lot. I'm not against it. Usually the reason people like to put it first is because, well, if we ask these other questions first, if we ask them how quick we were or how easy the phone was to get through, or it'll taint our recommendation because we'll have planted all these things we're bad at and we'll have asked about those. So they'll be really cross by the time we ask out. Let's ask that first. Well, they might give you a recommend low. If you ask it last, they might give you lower. But actually, would you recommend us is not a very customer-centric question. It's about you, not about their experience. Put it last. Ask the other questions because, well, I'll show you a good example of why to do that. Rather than explain it, I'll show you a good example in a minute. Avoid language that's focused on your needs, like tell us how we did. Much better to say something like, how can we make your experience better for you? It's a subtle difference, isn't it? But I'm much more motivated to respond if the outcome is going to be that you're going to do work to make my life easier. You're possibly thinking that I put price draws in the wrong list. Why are they a disincentive? I'm cynical, aren't I? Maybe I'm getting too old. Unless you're going to give an iPad to everyone, don't say, give us feedback and win an iPad. Because the reality is, what are you going to do? 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 probably you're going to give an iPad to because they're expensive. So the person's got a 0.1% chance of winning. Is that good? Is that not so good? Better than the lottery, maybe. But it's a 99.9% probability of not winning an iPad. Those odds are not going to move the dial on your satisfaction rate. Do you know what prize a customer really wants? What prize do they really? What would really make them happy? What would really make you happy if you fill in a satisfaction survey? Isn't it that you want your feedback to be read and you to get a sensible acknowledgement and maybe it to be acted on appropriately? Just a thought. If you can convey confidence that that's going to happen, that will increase your response rates, certainly more than a very tiny chance of winning a prize. Okay, what are things to do more of? Timing. Not a big fan of annual satisfaction surveys. Again, there can be a place for them, particularly if it's a relationship, an ongoing thing that you have with your customers, but maybe think about phasing them over the year and doing 1/12 of your customers each month. And then you've got a regular heartbeat of satisfaction. You don't have to wait a year before you find out any problems that are brewing, and neither is your data more and more stale as the months go by. So think about the key interactions that you have with customers. When would they have feedback that they want to give? What are those steps in your customer journey or life cycle? Those are the best times to ask. And that's when you'll get the best quality data, obviously, because that's when it's front of mind for them. Make it ridiculously easy. I've said earlier, I think, make it possible to respond in 20 seconds. I bet you could tell me what you like or don't like about any of your suppliers in 20 seconds. It'll be the highlights, but actually that's the priorities for you, and that's what the company needs to hear. See the comment halfway down? Don't make me think. In my research for my job, I have watched hours and hours of videos of people filling in surveys. We've got tools that redact the personal data, and we can just watch where the mouse goes and where they point and click, and which questions they answer, what makes them abandon. When they get to a customer like, please give a reason for your scores. That's quite a common question we get asked, isn't it? But actually they hesitate. Like a horse when it's in the Grand National, when the horse sees that really big scary fence and there's a refusal. It's much simpler for a customer to answer if you split it up and ask more simply, what do we do that you like? What would you like us to improve on? Much simpler questions to answer, and we see that the flow, the response rate flow, that really oils the wheels. It's a simple change, isn't it? But just that slight change and thinking it through about the impact on the customer faced with your survey, those things improve response rates. Basically, you're making it dead easy for them to tell you what you need to do, as I said earlier, to keep their business. And that's where your interests and their interests align. Responding appropriately, that's critical. That's what we all want as customers, isn't it? Not just to response rates for this survey, but if in future, if next time they fill in a survey and they had a satisfactory, if it was brilliant, they filled in the survey, it was dead easy, it was dead simple, it's dead quick, and goodness me, something happened that was satisfying and rewarding, was what I expected and wanted to happen. Or even if they said, well, sorry, that's a great idea, Guy, but we're not going to do that for these. Well, even so, it's a sensible and reasonable response. I wasn't wasting my time filling in the survey. Well, can you see how a great survey process leads to actually long-term improvements in response rates? So responding appropriately is critical. It can also be controversial. Some people will shudder and say, well, I can't, if I'm, Guy, you said at the start, I'm going to get a fire hose of feedback. I can't possibly respond to every beat. Where am I going to get the people from? Well, it can be done. I have done it personally in a company with hundreds of thousands of customers, and we didn't need extra headcount. But I do agree you can't necessarily do all of that in one big step. I'd love to help you. I'd love to talk that through with you and to help you take maybe even just this first step towards doing that if it's a step-by-step process. For the companies with fewer people, it's going to be feasible straight away. It helps actually that there's only two types of feedback. There's those suggestions for improvement. Well, customers don't expect you to change the business overnight, so an acknowledgement will be fine. And then the service recovery. Something's gone, your process is fine, something's gone wrong for me. Now I'm cross. I've phoned 3 times, nobody's fixed my problem. And well, if you jump on those, pick them up and solve them quickly, then you've kind of got that customer on your side. They're an ambassador for you, aren't they? So, well, here's a summary. Here's your cheat sheet for the detailed tactics once you've got the strategy that we looked at earlier, once you've got that right. Make sure there are no weak links, just a few technical issues here. I can see I'm running up to the time here. Apologies for that. I'm going to whistle through. You'll get the video afterwards, but there's a couple of, I haven't answered the crunch questions yet, so I'll get onto those. But yeah, however wonderful your survey design is, if the customer doesn't receive it because there's a technical blockage and it goes into the spam, or because the covering email is worded badly, then they won't see your beautiful survey. What is a good response? Guy, tell me the number. Am I going to get 10%? Am I going to get 20%? Depending on your industry sector, I'm afraid it's how long is a piece of string. If you're B2B, it'll change from B2C. But this is, I said we've got millions of satisfaction surveys in our databases. This is the range we see. You've got the percentage of customers, percentage response rates across the bottom, and you've got the number of customers getting them is the height of those charts. So you can see it actually varies really widely between about 5% and 25%. If you're in that range, don't worry. As long as you've done the checklist, we'll send you a checklist afterwards that goes through all these detailed tactics. As long as you've gone through that health check and you're in that range, you're fine. Don't send reminders. Don't pester your customers and make things worse. We have some people who get 2% and they're delighted. We get some because they're getting improvements to the bottom line of the business. We've got some people who get 40% and they want more. But this is the lie of the land. That's the number. This company do stay if you've got, sorry, I've overrun, you get the video. Do stay if you've got an extra 5 minutes. I will wrap up, promise, within 5 minutes. This company did a trial with us last month. They said, we just want to put this image in our email footer. We said, well, that's fine. It's a good thing to do, but please do other things too, because your response rates will be negligible. It'll be homeopathically small because people stop reading at the email signature. They won't read your image, let alone click on it. And we also suggested some more customer centric. We want to know how we did. That's not really. So they said we want to do it anyway. What do you think happened? In 2 weeks, they got hardly any replies. We were very smug. But one of the replies they did get was from their biggest customer. Their biggest customer gives them 20% of their overall revenue. And that customer was hanging on by a thread. And this response, the person who had clicked on the image, this was the first they knew that there was any kind of problem at all, and that the customer was in Last Chance Saloon. They sorted the problem, breathed a big sigh of relief. We didn't know whether to feel smug or anymore, because they quickly signed up with us, and now they said, yeah, actually we'd like to get a bit more feedback. Can you help us with the other touch points? And they're getting higher response rates now. So all is well, and they saved the biggest customer. And the ongoing feedback is still giving them valuable insights. How high can we get the score? How high can we go? This is from an insurance company. They replaced the system they'd been using for many years with our software at the beginning of the year. They're delighted. Every aspect of what they do has been improved. We're not generally very smug, but we're a little bit happy about this too, because they're lovely people to deal with. That's nice for us. Because the system we replaced is an insurance industry specialist customer feedback system, the fact that we blew it out the water on every angle was that was quite special. Anyway, the company offers offers different types of insurance, and their survey process is similar across the motor, the home insurance, the pet insurance. But the response rate for this one, they didn't just knock it out the park. They knocked the ball into orbit, and the only difference was the picture of the cute puppy. I don't know what that says about pictures. Help. Cute puppies obviously help. Maybe it's the demographic. Maybe car drivers different from pet owners. But the images help. Happy, smiling people. Pictures of your team. I'm going to help you if your happy, smiling face or your poor, sad face, however you want to play the tone of voice, is staring out the screen at me. Sorry, the right-hand image is a bit fuzzy. They've gone on to refine this survey actually and push the response rates even further. And what they've done is that thing, as I said about first question, they've changed from the NPS question to asking the customer about a specific specific part of their experience. What target should you set? Here's why it's a trick question. Please don't set one. Aim for the optimum, not maximum. And the optimum is where you've got win-win for you and your customers. You're getting the most that you reasonably can get with a nice process. The customer's getting a nice process. So yeah, I sum it up something like this. Every customer who's got feedback that they want to give has had an easy opportunity to do so. And when they did give it, it was rewarding. They got a reasonable response. So, sorry, there's a bit harsh diagram, isn't it? But you get the picture. Aim for maximum, and it's one type of customer experience. Aim for optimum, you get the other. We got loads more checklists. I've skated over the detail of some of the tactics. Apologies, I've overrun. I've tried so hard not to, but this is meat and drink to me. And hopefully, if you're catching up on this on the video, that's been useful for you, the extra material. On our website, we've got more resources. That one on the left, how to improve response rates, that's your go-to for your checklist for all your different little tactics. Once you've got your thinking straight and got that strategy of how you use feedback in your business, please do focus on that. Use us, call out to us. We'd love to help you do that. We'll do it for free. Whether you might even be using another system. We're nice people too. Next steps, we'll follow up. Email me, get a demo of the software if you'd like to learn a bit more about what we do that's so much better than other people you might be thinking of. If you think about other people, we'll send a follow-up email with everything that you need to know and a few extra free resources as well. We'll send you a feedback form, of course we will, and you will reward us with a high response rate, I'm sure. I hope this has helped you. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in.